Welcome, ladies and gents, to another episode of Skybox Sessions, which I have now named this series. And this is an analytical series where we focus on breaking down Counter-Strike Global Offensive at the professional level and at the macro level. So we're talking all the strategies, the defaults, like what are all these foundational concepts and things that we need to think about, and these ideas that we need to understand for us to better comprehend how professional Counter-Strike is played and the impact that we have when we're playing matches as well. I think if you're a Counter-Strike fan, if you play the game, there is a lot of value for you in the series. And we previously covered Inferno and and how the default works on Inferno and map control and so on. And we also covered Mirage as well. The videos in the future will be a bit more bite-sized, as once we have these defaults on each of the maps out of the way with, I'll be able to kind of lean on that knowledge that I can then refer you guys back to later on as we take specific rounds and we look more at the more particularly interesting rounds in the future. Okay, so before I go into the default and then my thoughts on the changes of DUST2, right now we have Team Liquid versus Astralis. This is the finals from the ECS 8 finals at the end of 2019. ECS, of course, is no longer a thing. It will be replaced by B-side effectively. However, before we get into the default of Astralis, obviously they're a god tier team on this map, I wanted to quickly give my 2 cents on DUST2 as a map. I personally think that it is the weakest map in professional Counter-Strike, and I think that as a player and as a spectator of professional Counter-Strike. Now, the reasons I have for this is because this map gives you very limited options on the CT side. There's very limited good CT options, but there is an abundance of good T options. Now, I think that the best Counter-Strike, and in terms of its integrity as a competitive esport, is going to come from having a lot of options, good options on both sides, because that gives both teams more decisions that could be made to show that they have more skill than their opponents. And that, I think, is extremely compelling, because not only does it create more evolution to the metagame on a particular map, giving that map more freshness for longer, it also creates a scenario where the teams that do the work stand out more and get rewarded more for their hard work. And we get rewarded as fans and players because we see better Counter-Strike. We get to play more interesting Counter-Strike. A map and an example which has loads of options is a map like Overpass. It has loads of options for the T side and loads of options for the CT side. And there's all kinds of things. There's so many options that you actually have to give up a lot of options to pick to go down various paths. And that's really interesting too. Whereas when you look at a map like DUST2, the CTs don't really have good options. They're hamstrung from the very beginning of the round. They're forced to use utility almost immediately, and they're going to take damage through these double doors very commonly. They can't really contest cat control, which we're going to go into, which is part of the major part of the mid control of this map for the Ts. It's basically a given. And again, we'll go into more details of that in a moment. For those of you that might be kind of disagreeing with me, we'll expand upon that. And the other thing that I think is very difficult for me when I look at this map in terms of getting good quality gameplay from it is the fact that the rotation times are absolutely enormous between the two bomb sites. It's actually so long, the rotation times, and you guys will start to understand. I think on the Mirage video in part 2, we highlighted this towards the end of the video, where we were talking about rotation times. How do you mitigate a long rotation time? How do you mitigate a rotation time in general? Well, it's by having information. Well, how do you get information? Information is had by being able to make plays on the map for information, and information takes its form in map control. And so on this map, because as a CT, you don't get good options to take map control. I mean, the option to push here sucks. Your options to push here sucks. Your options to push here kind of sucks, and is way more risky than it is worth it. And that's another thing, like weighing up the risk. The risk here is really insane. If you lose a player because the rotation times are so long, it's additionally punishing. It's so punishing if you lose a player or if you don't have information. And because your options to get information are so risky, you're probably losing a player by getting information. And if we look at Inferno or Mirage, at the very least, you have good options to take the mid component or challenge the mid component of the default. Or at the very least, let's say if you look at Mirage, Mirage, you can do an underpass play, you can do a B-apps push, you can do a palace play, you can do all sorts on the extremities of the map. But here again, the options just really are just non-existent. They're terrible. The only time you really see this upper dark push coming in is when there's a very compelling argument that the A push is coming. Otherwise, it doesn't tend to happen too much. So yeah, it's a really tough map. Teams like Astralis have done things to kind of try to understand how to mitigate this. You'll see the solo AWP pushes, and we talked about that on Mirage, where and also in the Zywu Part 2 POV on Mirage, where if you push with an AWP on the extremities, it's a counter default maneuver. That's what that play is. So anyway, going into the default now of DUST2. Now we've gone over some of those gripes and various tidbits of information. One of the things that we need to think about again is it's a similar concept to Mirage. You don't need more than 3 players to take the catwalk control, which is the mid component here, which basically allows you to kind of pivot into basically anywhere. This is the stronghold. This is the foundation of your default. It's a central position on the map, which allows you to mislead your opponents, to really mess with their rotations, to really threaten both sides of the map, to be able to beat their rotations and quickly at the drop of a dime, go for a cat drop into a B split, or to threaten a B split and then jump up into a cat push, or rotate out towards long. You get all these really great options in terms of your rotation timings to really throw off the CTs. And another way of thinking about rotations and timings is that if you threaten a position where it's a long rotation time and the CTs have to start moving there, and then you kind of seesaw it back the other way, you basically create this like window of time where you basically beat them positionally. And the longer you take, the more that window closes, and then eventually that window is closed because the CTs are in position to defend now. So that's something to kind of think about a little bit. So typically we have this situation, as I mentioned, whereby there's no need to have more than 3 players on catwalk. And a quick point about this is, let's just, as an exercise, say that we had, let's use numbers, that's easier. Let's say we had 1 player in upper dark and we had 4 players on catwalk. Well, now what you've done is you've created a risk, a needless risk, by having this area empty. Now, okay, sure, CTs will not often push long. However, it is a risk because some CTs, I'm looking at you, Boomich, from Na'Vi, will push long house egregiously and in times that you might not expect it. And if they've been watching your demos and they see a tendency for you to abandon that position, then they're probably going to want to actually think, actually there are some rounds here where I think that I should actually push this. Maybe that was the case with Boomich. I don't know. I'm not trying to get on his back about this, but anyway. So what you're doing is you're introducing a needless risk. What do you get for that risk? Well, you actually don't get anything, because having the 4th player on catwalk before you're ready to go for a set piece or something is pretty pointless. So let's not introduce risk where it doesn't need to be. So you want a 1-3-1 in this default, and there's many ways to get to that default. Again, not going to go over too much of the tactical implications of that right this second. We'll see that play out in a moment, and from Astralis' point of view, there they are. So once you have these areas, what happens? What are you looking for in terms of the CTs? Now, when you have these positions and you start to harass, maybe you drop this, the lurk smoke, and you try to bait out your utility, you start to slow the round down. What you're looking for is trying to decipher which CT setup are we up against here, because the CT setup that you're up against changes how you want to play the round out. Now, if the CT setup is, let's say very, very committed towards the A side of the map, and they've kind of abandoned the middle part of the map. Let's do this again. So you got someone graffiti, you got someone car, and you got someone long. This setup is a setup in which going for B splits is the most beneficial. Now, the reason is because the rotation time is huge. And again, let's look at this. Actually, one thing I'd love to have added to Skybox would be like an eraser. That'd be really cool. But one of those things that would be really cool, that is really cool about this for the T's, is that we talked about rotation times. Now, look at the rotation time from pressure here to this position. It's very short, because as soon as you go for this B split, obviously you're smoking off this position. So even if someone was playing in CT spawn for the CT side, it'd be very difficult for them to do too much if you as the T side do this push correctly. with the utility correctly. And then these players on the B site have a decision to make. Sometimes the decision is that they have to actually attack the upper dark area because they're going to loot. They know that they're going to get split on. One of the most important elements to attacking a bomb site is splitting the defense. That's a very important concept that you always want to be doing, because if you split the defense, you basically prevent one of the greatest strengths of the CTs, which is a defensive setup with multiple players, where they use each other as team play. They use each other. They use each other to team play off of. They use each other to bait. They use each other to buy time. They use each other to provide utility for one another. They use each other to provide cover for angles that they themselves cannot cover. If you split the defense, you kill all of that. All of that's gone. So, well, not all of it necessarily, but a lot of those things are much weaker for the CTs. So sometimes if you're afraid that that's going to happen and you have the option to aggressively take a position because you know the B split's coming, there is an option in this case where the CTs are playing in the site for them to attack upper dark. However, we're not really going to go into that too much right now. Instead, we're talking about the options. So, what if it's the case that the CTs are playing a setup whereby that we've got a guy in, we've got this setup kind of going on. So in this setup, you have a CT one of the A defenders who's playing more of a rotation position in a CT spawn, and you have the other guy from the kind of the support B player that's rotating, that can rotate between B and middle and can provide that crossfire, can provide that aggression on middle if necessary, if there's any kind of middle shenanigans going on. That's a really can be a pretty strong setup for the CTs. Again, if you use utility correctly, it's always going to be hard for the CTs on this map, but there are some favorable angles actually, especially for the guy from CT if this position isn't smoked off. So what do you want to do if you guys are on the T side of things here in this perspective? How do you want to play this one out? Well, if you can figure out that they have a guy that's dropped in CT, that means, like, where is this guy coming from? If we use a deduction here, where is this guy coming from? He's likely not coming from the B defense. He's likely coming from the A defense, which kind of needs 3 players, generally speaking. So that means that the A attack is going to be a lot stronger. If you go for the push up here, it's going to be really, really strong. So what would typically happen is you would probably want to move this guy as a lurk for lower dark, or he can also try to lurk upper or top mids potentially. I don't know if this would be the correct path for this, but either way, that's this guy is on the extremity towards B, therefore he is the lurk on the A play, and then you could rotate someone back to try to assist the guy on long, or you could go everyone towards cat, or you could kind of go for a 2-2 split as well. And in this particular instance, it's really interesting because both the 4-man attack or the 2-2 split are pretty effective, or even a 3-1. And the reason is because you don't even have to, like, the defense is automatically split. I mean, look at the players for the CTs. The CT here is we'll go into his POV effectively. The CT from CT spawn is in a really awkward position because we're going to see smokes. We're going to see a smoke here. We're going to see a smoke here. And so it's really awkward for this guy. The reason that you throw this smoke, the smoke that goes around this position, is because it gives this kind of like cheeky one-way to anybody who's sitting on this ramp position. And also this smoke also provides like a one-way down to these positions around here. So you, as a guy coming in from CT rotating up, you're fucked. Excuse my language. I mean, not completely screwed over, but it is not ideal. The ideal way to defend this is to have somebody who can play Goose and having this kind of a setup basically. And the reason for this is that, and we've seen the way that teams actually deal with this set piece now, where you have the smoke here and here, and you get the mollies here and here. The way that you deal with this set piece is you either try to retake and let it happen, or what you do is the Goose player is really critical, because what he has to do is play aggressively. And you have all these big smokes up in this position, and the Goose player wants to kind of like swing around and try to catch the players as they're coming through the smoke and play really close range. Because if he sits in Goose, it used to be that used to be kind of a, even though it's like a left eye for the CT and it's a right eye swing for the Ts, it used to be quite a strong peak actually, because as you can see, there is an angle here for the CT if he's managed to fall back with the AWP. So he gets a line so he can cover this position from here. Also, if they go for the short plant, because the CTs have dropped utility to slow the Ts down around this area, this guy can basically kill the planter planting for short. And again, the plant really needs to kind of go down whilst the smokes are up, if you can possibly do that, because as soon as the smokes are gone, all the cover is gone. And when all the cover is gone, obviously you're going to have a bad time. So there we've highlighted effectively like the two major options for the T side out of the default. You can either go, and it all really depends on you getting that information. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. You can have sound cues that might make themselves, known to you from the CTs, or, possibly, you'll have a situation whereby maybe you just have a good read. And the thing is on DUST2, it's hard to go wrong, because typically speaking, you're in a position whereby the B splits, or the B split is going to be strong even if there is a CT and CT spawn. The set piece on A is going to be strong even if there is even if the CTs are set up for it and play it correctly. It's still going to be strong. It's just a very hard map for the CTs. So there's another thing I want to quickly mention, and I think I'll make some videos specifically about this, but I'll quickly mention it here. Is whenever you're playing a T side, if you're in the IGL position, and as a team you kind of should know this, everyone needs to be on the same page. If you go into a situation where you're at a 4v4, doesn't really matter the timing that much, as long as you have time left to do something. You get this situation very commonly. The CTs will go like this. They'll play this setup. This is extremely common as a response to the CTs going down a player. And one of the reasons for that is because, as I mentioned, the options for the CTs absolutely suck. When they lose a player, this is maybe the worst map in the entire game if you lose a player. This is an Inferno, extremely brutal, very difficult to kind of figure out what to do because all of your aggressive risks are awful. This is the typical setup. So if you get a 4v4, again, like, what do you think is a better attack? Attacking into two players who can help each other, or attacking into one player on either the from the short position or the long position? The answer is obviously that the A attack is much stronger, because these two players can't really support each other very well, and just inherently. So you can have effectively like a 4v1 if you want to try to rush it with four players. It's really interesting. I see so many pro matches where what will happen is teams overcomplicate it, and they'll just go for a B split in these cases, almost giving the B players the best possible, or the CTs the best possible chance that they could have to win the round. So anyway, now we've run over that, let's take a quick look at the rounds. So you have Astralis here on the T side, and we're going to see their pathing. Okay, so now the first thing we can talk about is this smoke here. Now, this, again, it really sucks that the CTs have to do this, and there's many reasons why this really sucks. Obviously, they could still take damage through the doors. You can see that Nitro and Stewie have both taken damage already. That really sucks. It's 5 seconds into the round, and they had to drop a smoke, and they still get damaged. It honestly just really sucks. What also happens is, because of that smoke being dropped by the CTs, it actually prevents the CTs from actually contesting this. So that's a huge problem, because what that creates is a super fast rush timing down middle or down catwalk. You can get to this position around like 143. So another 5 seconds, there can already be someone here. So what was happened here is there was a cat boost, I believe, because there's no other way that this timing could be had by this CT. So those are a couple of considerations straight away. And there's obviously a lot of issues with the fast mid timing or the fast cat timing. And that is, for example, if the CTs, for whatever reason, are a little bit fearful of a rush timing on B, they're going to want to take both B players to B straight away, leaving this open during the timing when the T can arrive there. And similarly, if the CTs go for a heavy long setup because they're worried about a potential abuse of long spawns, which often happens, now they've got no one on catwalk, and you've got a T up on catwalk here at 145 or whatever it is, 143, 142. So that's just kind of outrageous. So we'll let the round play out here, and we'll start to see the default developing. So Astralis opted for 2 players through Dark. They're going to leave Magisk in this position, and they're going to slowly work towards catwalk. You've got obviously one player looking after long, Zipex, and right here you can see what they're doing is they're trying to spend effort just clearing the close mid positions. They really want to make sure that they do this because if you have any CTs in a kind of close positions around the doors, then that can create problems in terms of the CTs get too much information. And it's so easy to deny it that you should just do it. And you can see the setup here is that they have a CT in spawn. So this is one of the setups I was talking about, where you've got the CTs in this configuration. Okay, so we talked about what happens, like what do we want to do when the CTs are in this configuration? We talked about the A attack being perhaps the best way to handle this. But you have to, as a T side, identify what the setup looks like. So one thing that it will be difficult for us to see here is the sound, the comms, you know, some of the things that might give this away for the T side. So we'll just have to assume that Astralis, being, you know, as amazing as they are, have figured it out. And you can see, actually, interestingly, Magisk has given up what could be a lurk position here, and Glaive is actually going towards Xbox, so he's on the extremity now, but they're all joining together, all four. So it looks like they're going to set up for a set piece here onto the A-bomb site. We're already seeing this lurk smoke, and again, let's look at this smoke. So, oh my god, Skybox is great. So you can actually see, okay, so this is it. This is the one way. This is the one way smoke. You can see, obviously, here and here below the smoke, and that's pretty amazing. The second smoke is going to come if they do one to this position. And when you throw this smoke, it's amazing because it's not only can it be for the set piece. This is another reason why this map sucks for the CTs. Not only can that be for the set piece, and can you set piece behind that smoke, it can also just be a lurk smoke. It can also just be, hey, we're doing this smoke that's very threatening to the A-bomb site, but it actually could be a complete fake at the same time. So let's see how Astralis play this one out. They're actually not sending anyone towards long, but of course, right now, Astralis are worrying about a long split. So even though there's no one coming long, the attention is still on that position for one of the players because they have to be worried about it, because it very realistically could happen. And if there was a split, then they're going to get absolutely screwed. But at the same time, we're going to see a very awful situation for these two players. And part of the reason is also going to be because Naf is likely going to get flashed to high heaven. We can kind of look from his position here. I think we're seeing any flashes go out there. We'll see how they, is it actually, yeah, it's Naf with the AWP here. There's flashbang, players dropping down, Molotov to the ramp, a shot taken, but just look, there's just nothing really for him to get here. He's falling back because he wants to be able to play with his teammate. He doesn't want to be out here exposed. At best, it would be one and done, and that's not good enough in this kind of a situation. They have to hold on to the long position. And so let's quickly talk about, from, again, a macro perspective, what's happening for the CTs here. The objective should be for them to hold on to the long position, to give up the bomb site for a plant, and that gives them then a split, their own kind of A split, as the cat players can then come through to attack cat and hopefully try to get a split going. That is one of the better objectives here. There's another thing they can try to do as well, is they can split through CT spawn. That's also an option if they think that there's a heavy cat presence and they don't want to mess with that too much. So those are the two main options, and the option of going CT has been much more popular in recent times than going catwalk as well. So let's see how this plays out once again. By the way, also very cool that we see this huge drop presence, and it's partly also because they know that there was a guy CT. This is one of the reasons why they've attacked this bomb site. So let's see how it plays out. Okay, what is happening? Okay, so this is a little bit confusing. Obviously, you can see that this player CT is stuck below the players on the catwalk. Dupree's there watching the smoke for that push though, and we have the hold of long from the CTs, and the short plant comes in because short control is still there for Astralis. And again, like, I mean, at what point were Liquid in any position to do anything about this? It's 4v5. Sure, Astralis have lost a player, but they've got a bomb plant in favorable positions. Flashes will go down, and okay, so let's just rewind here and just look at this quickly from Device's perspective. Because we saw the flash come in. Let's see, where are we? Oh, okay. Flashbang comes in. And look at that. Just look how beautiful that is, the timing of that. The only way that you can safely deal with this AWPer, and this is not matchmaking, this is not a bug, is flashing him off. And this is a very chaotic situation, but Astralis, obviously, they are the best in the world. They have a flash ready for this. And let's go to Naf's perspective now. Let's see if we can get to Naf's perspective. Yeah. So look at the timing of that. That is just Astralis things right there. That's incredible. That's so incredible. I know I said I wouldn't go in too much into the tactical depth of this, but you know what? That's as a incredibly impactful and clean and well executed tactic. That's just phenomenal from Astralis. So back into the free look. I will see that the major threat has been dealt with by this beautiful display from Astralis. And there really doesn't appear to be too much that can be done here now. Just they've been completely locked out. So the play for the CTs was to try to hold on to long, and it really all came down to Naf being able to get value with his AWP. Twist is basically out of the rounds. Nitro is out of the rounds. And the player in CT was out of the round, and the other B rotator was out of the rounds, and the other guy was just got completely destroyed. So again, it just shows the power of knowing what the CT setup is. And I honestly couldn't find a single good option for Team Liquid. So I think that kind of concludes this video. So this was a bit longer than the last one. Hope you guys enjoyed this as well. I'll be throwing out a lot more of these. If you have any requests, any things you want me to expand upon, let me know, and I will expand upon it for you. Cheers.